Greetings denizens of the internet, take 7. I did a video the other day where I basically just said I'm trying to make video games again, and I thought I should add a little bit more now about why it's taken me so long to get started, because I did say a couple of months ago that I was going to start trying this, and I ran into two big problems, which neither of them I really expected. First is scope. It seems that I have an idea for a simple game that I can make as my first test project, and then when I come to write it down a couple of days later, it's somehow grown in the back of my mind into a complex web of overlapping systems, which sounds like it'll be really fun to play, but there's no clear point where I can easily cut it down to something I can make easily for a first prototype. It will be a big project that doesn't have a clear first version. But I do think I've got an idea now, so maybe I'll tell you about that later. The other problem is tools. There's been a lot of advancement in game development tools, programming languages, and more structured development environments since I last did anything serious. Now, I thought I'd be able to learn a new language easily enough. I've done it quite a few times in the past and it's not been a real problem. However, I just kind of start reading tutorials or watching videos or whatever and can't focus. A lot of the time that's because it's going over the absolute basics, and I haven't been able to find instructions that don't assume you need to know the very basics of programming. So I couldn't find like a tutorial that just goes over the new stuff for this new tool, rather than going back to overly simplistic metaphors to explain what programming is. But more recently, I've thought that that might not actually be the problem, because thinking back about it, the languages that I feel really confident in, I've not learned from a manual or from any kind of tutorial. The ones that I think I can actually be effective in, well, not suitable for game making obviously, but the ones that I feel really confident with, I've always learned by picking apart somebody else's code. Maybe somebody posts on a forum asking for help and I think, well, I know the problem you're describing, I just don't know that language, so I'll glance over your code, see if I can understand it well enough to format a solution in the same language, and then help with that. And after a couple of months of doing that, I end up knowing the language well enough for people around there to consider me an expert, despite the fact I've not used it myself, which is a bit weird. But yeah, the ones that I feel confident with, I've never actually learned from a manual or tutorial, so maybe that's part of the issue. I started wondering if I might actually be better off getting someone to make a basic first prototype for me, then attempting to immerse myself in a new set of development tools by modifying that. And it's not actually that hard to find somebody willing to write basic code for money. It's like, there's Fiverr and Rent-A-Coder, all those sites like that. I thought, okay, I'm not asking for a complete project, I just want somebody to make me a basic game that I can... tripped over a loose paving slab there. I just want somebody to help me with a basic game that I can then modify and learn the tools while I'm doing it. And I think that for the way my mind works, that might actually be more effective than trying to find a usable tutorial or read a manual. So that's what I'm going to try and do. I've found a guy on Fiverr who isn't too expensive, so let's see if that works. So the next question then is what kind of game I should be making. There's lots of options out there, but a lot of the time I find that I have an idea and then it grows and grows and becomes more complex, and the ideas I have are often not easy to cut down into a basic form that I can make work as a quick prototype, which means that I would have to basically do everything before I can see if any of it works. And that's not feasible for a first game. It's not suitable. I mean, there's plenty of videos on YouTube that will tell you that you need to start with something small. And yeah, so the other day I was looking for something to watch while I eat supper, just a short video, and I came across a review of a game I can't remember the name of. It's not one I've played and not even I've even heard of before. And the person basically said they're trying to make a Metroidvania type game out of Pac-Man. And that person's opinion was pretty much that you can't do that, they're not compatible. But after I watched that, YouTube kept on recommending me different people reviewing this game, and they all said Pac-Man Metroidvania can't work. And that gets the contrarian part of my brain thinking, well, if I wanted to make Pac-Man Metroidvania, how would I do it? I wondered how that could be done, and I had an idea. And it does seem like a relatively simple idea. So, that's my idea, is how I think a Pac-Man Metroidvania could work without losing the key gameplay styles of either of the things that inspired it. I can't remember what I was going to say next. I'm sure there was something else. Oh yeah, I was also going to mention the 4 game ideas that I've got in the back of my mind that I decided are too large to be a first project. I do want to mention these because I've jotted down the ideas. They're still there on paper somewhere. And if I can build up my skills a bit and so I actually know what I'm doing, or put a team together, or actually have the resources to make these bigger games, I would like to do them at some point. And if you'd like to hear about any of them, I'm sure I can ramble at length about any of the 4. Out of those 4, first is Ascent of the Britannic Pattern, which is a British Empire themed puzzle platformer, rage climber, factory builder automation game. And I'm aware that's a very strange combination, but I do think that I've got a way it could work. So yeah, I would very much like to make that someday, but I'm aware it's a big project and it's not something I can do for my first one. Similarly, my previous idea, the one that I thought was going to be small and compact enough until it developed meta puzzles, is a thing that I tentatively called Magic Land, which is basically a platform game without jumping. And which lets you move around the platforms to make up for your lack of ability to jump. And that does sound like a great idea. However, it would have complex meta puzzles, which means that I would have to take a lot more care in implementing the basic systems in order to allow for much more complex stuff to be built onto it later, which basically means it's hard to make a first prototype. And also, I suspect I'm not actually that good at designing puzzle levels. I don't think I could come up with enough to make a complete game, which obviously would be a problem. Then there's another one which, to be honest, I wouldn't know where to start. We'll probably have to use a lot of external code, because it would be a chess roguelite, which seems an odd idea, especially if I tell you it's going to be a deck builder game as well. And yeah, it's weird things to put together, but the idea forms in my head, and I think that it's something that you could make work. And I think that's 3 ideas. Oh yeah, and the fourth one is a very strange idea, which would kind of depend on being a fake out that isn't entirely honest with the player about what kind of game it is, and would be titled Stroke Simulator 2028. I can't tell you that much about that one because it's a weird idea and I don't know how to summarise it. But that's my 4 ideas, and if you'd like me to go into in depth on any of them, just let me know. See you around. Have fun interneting.